She ran barefoot because stopping meant dying. The forest swallowed her the moment she crossed the tree-line, black branches clawing at the torn edges of her dress as if the night itself wanted to pull her back. Snow sliced into the soles of her feet, each step a scream of pain, but Eliza didn't slow. Pain was safer than hands. Safer than voices. Safer than the word mind whispered by men who believed fear was ownership. Behind her, lantern light bounced through the trees, uneven and frantic. Shouts cracked the silence, sharp with anger and whiskey. She didn't need to hear the words to know what they meant. She had learned that language too well. When men chased you in the dark, it was never to bring you home. Her lungs burned. Her legs shook. Still she ran. She had fled through a back door, past barrels slick with spilled liquor, past laughter that curdled her stomach. She hadn't grabbed shoes. Hadn't grabbed a coat. Freedom didn't wait for preparation. Freedom only asked one question: how badly do you want it? A root caught her foot. Eliza fell hard, the breath knocked clean out of her as snow filled her mouth and nose. She rolled, clawing at the ground, trying to stand. Her body betrayed her. The cold rushed in like a tide, numbing her legs, stealing strength she didn't have left to lose. The shouting grew closer. She curled in on herself, forehead pressed to the snow, a broken sound tearing out of her chest. Not a prayer. Not a plea. Just the raw animal knowledge that this was the end. Then the forest changed. Hoofbeats. Not many. Not fast. One horse, moving steady, deliberate, like whoever rode it wasn't afraid of what waited in the dark. A shape separated itself from the trees. A man stepped into the clearing, tall and solid, wrapped in a heavy coat dusted with snow, a rifle resting easy in his hands. He didn't rush. Didn't shout. He took in everything in a single glance: her bare feet, the blood at her lip, the terror shaking her so hard her teeth rattled. Eliza lifted her head just enough to see his face. Hard lines. Quiet eyes. The kind of man the mountains didn't bother trying to break. "Please," she whispered, not knowing what she was asking for anymore. Mercy. Distance. An ending that didn't hurt. The distant voices shouted again. The man's gaze shifted toward the sound, then back to her. Something in his expression closed, like a door being barred from the inside. "They won't touch you," he said. Eliza shook her head weakly. "You don't know what they think I am." He stepped closer, snow crunching under his boots. "I know what you are." She flinched. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her without asking, the weight of it warm, real, undeniable. Then he lifted her into his arms like she was something worth carrying. "Hold on," he said quietly. "I'm not letting go." And in that moment, cold, hunted, half-broken, Eliza realized the most dangerous thing in those woods wasn't the men chasing her. It was the mountain man who had just decided she was under his protection. Rowan didn't run with her in his arms. He moved the way mountains move, slow, certain, unstoppable. The forest seemed to part for him as he carried Eliza deeper into the dark, away from lantern light and shouting voices. Her head rested against his chest, and despite the terror still shaking her bones, she noticed how steady his heartbeat was. Not rushed. Not afraid. It was the heartbeat of a man who had already decided how this would end. The horse waited where the trees thickened, a broad-shouldered bay with snow clinging to its mane. Rowan set Eliza down only long enough to settle her on the saddle blanket, then mounted behind her, one arm firm around her waist. She tried to apologize, tried to explain, but the words tangled and fell apart in her throat. "Save your strength," Rowan said quietly. "You'll need it." They climbed higher, the trail narrowing into something that barely deserved the name. Snow deepened with every turn, muffling the world until even Eliza's breathing sounded too loud. Her feet burned as feeling crept back in, pain sharp and honest, but Rowan adjusted his hold without comment, keeping her steady when her body trembled. After a long stretch of silence, Eliza whispered, "They'll keep looking." Rowan didn't look down at her. "Not where we're going." The cabin appeared suddenly, tucked into a hollow between ridges as if the land itself were trying to hide it. Smoke curled from the chimney, thin but alive. To Eliza, it looked unreal: solid walls, a door that closed, light that didn't flicker with menace. Rowan dismounted first, then lifted her again, carrying her across the threshold without ceremony. Warmth hit her so fast she swayed. The cabin smelled of pine, iron, and clean wood smoke. Rowan set her gently on a stool near the fire, then immediately stepped back, giving her space like he understood fear needed room to breathe. "I'm going to set water on," he said, narrating his movements. "You don't have to talk." He did exactly that. No questions, no hovering. A basin appeared near her feet. Clean cloth. Thick socks. Rowan kept his back turned while she eased her aching feet into the warmth, tears sliding down her face without sound. Not from pain this time, but from the shock of being allowed dignity. When she finally looked up, Rowan had placed a mug of something hot beside her and taken a seat across the room, rifle within reach but attention gentle. "You can leave at first light if you want," he said. "But tonight, no one's touching you." Eliza stared at the fire, hands wrapped around the mug, and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Stillness. For the first time since she ran, the night wasn't hunting her. Eliza slept in short, broken pieces, waking every time the fire shifted or the wind pressed against the cabin walls. Each time her eyes flew open, panic clawed at her chest, until she saw the low glow of embers and Rowan's shadow sitting motionless in the chair by the door. He never slept fully. He rested the way men do when they've learned the cost of surprise. That knowledge, strangely, let Eliza breathe again. Near dawn, the storm eased. Silence settled over the mountain, thick and heavy. Eliza lay staring at the rough-hewn ceiling, realizing something that made her throat tighten. She was alive, and no one was touching her. When Rowan finally stirred the fire, Eliza pushed herself upright, her muscles stiff and sore. The borrowed dress hung loosely on her frame, but it was warm. Clean. Proof that someone had planned for her comfort without asking permission. "You don't have to explain anything," Rowan said without turning around, as if he could hear the thoughts chasing her. "But if you want to, I'll listen." Eliza hesitated. Words had always been dangerous. Words twisted into contracts and threats. But silence had nearly killed her. "My father died owing money," she began, voice low. "Not gambling, medical bills. The kind of debt that doesn't care if you're good or careful." Her hands clenched in her lap. "I went to work at Ashford's place because he said it was honest. Said I'd be safe." Rowan's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "He started small," Eliza continued. "Extra shifts. Docked pay for made-up reasons. Then he said I owed him for food, for lodging, for protection. When I tried to leave, he laughed." Her voice shook now. "He said no one would hire a woman who couldn't keep a man happy." Rowan's hand closed slowly around the arm of his chair. "He brought out the paper," Eliza whispered. "A marriage contract. Said it would solve everything. Said I'd be respectable. Said if I didn't sign, he'd make sure I never worked in this territory again." She swallowed hard. "I signed because I was afraid." Rowan finally looked at her then. Not with pity. With something heavier. Respect edged with anger. "You ran because you were brave," he said. Eliza shook her head. "I ran because I was desperate." Rowan stood, crossing the room slowly, stopping well short of her. "Same thing," he said quietly. Eliza's eyes filled. "What if he comes back?" Rowan's answer came without hesitation. "Then he learned something." She searched his face. "What?" "That the mountains don't give things back once they decide to keep them." Eliza didn't know why, but that sentence felt like shelter. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe she hadn't just escaped. She had arrived somewhere she was meant to survive. By the third day, Eliza could feel her body returning to her. Not whole, but present. The ache in her feet dulled from fire to memory. The bruises faded from violent color to quiet shadow. She helped where she could, sweeping the cabin floor, warming bread by the hearth, learning the shape of a place that didn't ask her to earn safety with fear. Rowan never corrected her movements. Never hovered. He treated her like someone who belonged in the space she occupied. That was when the sound came. A horse. Eliza froze, broom slipping from her fingers. Her pulse roared so loud she was sure Rowan could hear it. He was at the table, sharpening a blade. The sound stopped. Rowan lifted his head slowly, not startled, just alert. "Stay here," he said. Not a command. A promise. Eliza moved to the window anyway, heart pounding, peering through frost-edged glass. A man sat on the horse below the ridge, scanning the land like he owned it. Even at a distance, she recognized the posture. The confidence of someone used to taking. Rowan stepped outside. Eliza's breath caught as the door closed behind him. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read the shapes of the exchange. The rider gestured toward the forest. Rowan didn't move. Didn't gesture back. He stood like the cabin itself, rooted, unmoved. Finally, the rider laughed, a sharp, ugly sound even through the cold air, then turned his horse downslope. Only when Rowan came back inside did Eliza realize her hands were shaking. "That was Ashford," she said. Rowan nodded. "He wanted to know if I'd seen a woman running barefoot." "And you said?" "I said no one runs through my land without me knowing why." Eliza swallowed. "He won't stop." "No," Rowan agreed. "Men like him never do." That night, Rowan barred the door, not because Eliza asked, but because he believed in preparation. He showed her where he kept supplies, where the rifle rested, where she could go if she needed space or escape. Every explanation came with choice. Every choice came without pressure. "You don't owe me anything," he said, watching her absorb the layout. "Not for staying. Not for leaving." Eliza looked at him then, really looked. At the quiet resolve in his face. At the distance he kept not from indifference, but respect. "I don't want to leave," she said softly. "I want to stay where no one decides my worth." Rowan's gaze held hers, steady and serious. "Then stay." Later, when the fire burned low and sleep threatened to pull her under, Eliza realized something else had changed. For the first time, fear wasn't chasing her. It was standing outside the door, and not coming in. Fear didn't announce itself. It slipped in quietly, riding the thin edge between safety and memory. The next morning, Eliza woke to silence so complete it pressed against her ears. Rowan was already outside, splitting wood near the tree line. She watched him through the window, the rhythm of his movement steady, controlled. It should have calmed her. Instead, a thought rose uninvited: what if safety only lasted while he was here? She pushed the thought away and dressed, forcing herself into the present. The cabin smelled of coffee and smoke. Ordinary things. Real things. She swept the floor, folded blankets, tried to believe routine could anchor her. Then she found the tracks. They circled the cabin at a distance, boots, not hooves. 2 sets. Fresh. Eliza's stomach dropped as if the floor had vanished beneath her. The world narrowed to those impressions in the snow, each one proof that the past hadn't finished reaching for her. Rowan noticed the change in her face instantly. "Inside," he said, scanning the ridge. "They're here," Eliza whispered. "He sent them." Rowan didn't argue. He ushered her in, checked the windows, then handed her the rifle. Not dramatically. Like a tool she had every right to hold. "You know how to use it," he said. "You don't have to. But you can." Her hands trembled as she took the weight of it. "I don't want to hurt anyone." Rowan met her eyes. "Neither do I. But we won't let anyone hurt you." The hours stretched thin. Wind carried voices once, far off, muffled, but no one approached the door. By late afternoon, the tracks faded downslope, swallowed by falling snow. Relief came slow, cautious, like an animal testing unfamiliar ground. That night, Eliza broke. Not loudly. Not with screams. She sat by the fire, knees pulled to her chest, shaking as the fear she'd outrun finally caught her. Rowan stayed across the room, letting the silence do its work until she spoke. "What if he owns me?" she asked, voice barely there. "What if paper matters more than what he did to me?" Rowan's answer was immediate. "He owns nothing of you. But the law. The law doesn't give men the right to break women," Rowan said, his voice hardening. "And even when it fails, the truth doesn't." Eliza's eyes filled. "I'm tired of running." Rowan nodded once. "Then don't." She looked up. "What if staying costs you?" Rowan didn't hesitate. "Some things are worth the cost." The fire cracked. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, relentless, covering tracks like the mountain itself had chosen a side. For the first time, Eliza didn't feel like prey waiting for the dark. She felt like someone preparing to stand. The moment came without warning. Eliza was outside, hanging damp cloth near the woodpile, when the wind shifted. It carried a sound she recognized deep in her bones, boots on snow, careless and unafraid. Not hunters. Not travelers. Men who believed they were allowed to be anywhere. Her breath caught. She didn't scream. Didn't run. She stepped back toward the cabin slowly, eyes never leaving the tree line. Rowan saw her before she reached the door. One look at her face was enough. He set the axe down gently, as if sudden movement might break the fragile balance holding the world together. "They're back," Eliza said. Rowan nodded once. "How many?" "2. Maybe 3. Rowan handed her the rifle again. This time, her hands were steadier. "You don't have to be brave," he said. Just be ready. The men didn't hide. They came into the clearing laughing, voices loud, confident. One of them called her name like it was a leash. Eliza felt the old fear rise, then stop. It didn't own her anymore. Rowan stepped forward first, placing himself between her and them. "You're on my land," he said calmly. "You should leave." One of the men sneered. "We're just collecting what's owed." Eliza's chest tightened, but she moved, one step forward, rifle visible, voice clear. "I'm not owed," she said. "I'm not owned." The men laughed again, but it sounded thinner now. Rowan didn't raise his weapon. He didn't need to. "Last warning," he said. "You walk away." One of them took a step closer. Eliza lifted the rifle, not aimed, but unmistakable. "I won't run," she said. "Not anymore." Something shifted then. The mountain held its breath. The men exchanged glances, calculating risk instead of reward. Finally, one spat into the snow. "Not worth it," he muttered. They backed away, boots crunching, bravado draining with every step downslope. Only when they were gone did Eliza realize her heart was pounding, not with terror, but with triumph. Rowan turned to her. "You did that." Eliza swallowed, tears blurring her vision. "I didn't know I could." Rowan's voice softened. "You always could. You just needed the space." That night, Eliza sat by the fire, hands warm, body tired but unbroken. She understood something now: freedom wasn't given in a single moment. It was claimed, again and again, until fear learned to stay away. And she wasn't running anymore. After that day, something between them settled. Not into certainty, but into trust. Eliza noticed it in the smallest things. The way Rowan stopped checking the ridge every hour. The way he left the cabin door unbarred during daylight. The way silence between them no longer felt heavy, but shared. Fear still existed, but it no longer led the conversation. They worked side by side without needing to fill the air. Eliza learned the land, where the snow melted first, where the creek ran shallow, where the wind changed direction before storms. Rowan taught her without teaching, letting her try, fail, adjust. He never corrected her hands unless she asked. He never stepped in unless she truly needed him. One evening, Eliza returned from gathering kindling to find Rowan repairing a broken chair leg. He glanced up. "You could have waited for me." She shrugged. "I didn't want to." Rowan studied her for a long moment, then nodded, like he understood that sentence carried more weight than it seemed. That night, Eliza dreamed, but not of running. She dreamed of standing still while the world moved around her, unable to push her over. She woke with her heart racing, but not in panic. In recognition. At dawn, Rowan left for the far ridge to check traps. Hours passed. Clouds rolled in faster than expected. Wind cut sharp. Eliza found herself pacing, listening too closely for sounds that weren't there. When Rowan finally returned, snow-dusted and tired, she realized how tightly she'd been holding herself together. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, then surprised herself by saying, "I was worried." Rowan paused. "So was I." That was all it took. Not a confession. Not a promise. Just two truths placed carefully between them. Later, as they sat near the fire, Eliza spoke quietly. "If you hadn't found me that night?" Rowan didn't let her finish. "I did." She looked at him. "And you stayed." Rowan met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "I'm still staying." Eliza felt warmth spread through her chest, not the burning rush of fear or desperation, but something slower. Stronger. The kind of feeling that didn't demand anything in return. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, clean, forgiving. Inside, Eliza realized she wasn't being held in place. She was being chosen. And for the first time in her life, she was choosing back. Spring didn't arrive all at once. It came in small mercies, the snow thinning along the ridge, water running louder in the creek, the sky staying light a little longer each evening. Eliza stood outside the cabin one morning, barefoot again, but this time the earth beneath her feet was cold soil, not flight. Not fear. Rowan watched from the porch, saying nothing. Eliza turned back toward him. Toward the man who had found her broken in the dark and never once tried to shape her into something smaller. "I don't know what comes next," she said honestly. Rowan nodded. "Neither do I." She waited, half expecting a promise, a plan, a claim. Instead, Rowan said, But whatever it is, you won't face it alone. Only if you choose that. Eliza felt something steady settle inside her. Not rescue. Not dependence. Partnership. She walked back to him slowly, deliberately, and stopped close enough to feel his warmth. I choose this place, she said. I choose staying. Rowan didn't pull her in. Didn't cage the moment. He only rested his forehead briefly against hers, like a vow made without witnesses. That night, as the fire burned low and the mountain rested around them, Eliza understood the truth she'd been running toward all along. He hadn't saved her by holding on. He'd saved her by never letting her go.